since you're a food scientist, do you look at your food differently when you're cooking it and you're planning it out?
Yes, definitely. For me, food is very, very important. Important in the sense, the food choices that I make or the food that I buy, I buy as a very with a lot of awareness.
Hmm.
There is nothing that is. I don't do it with any kind of
Right.
ignorance. Even when I'm cooking, I have all those things in my mind as to what will add what will enhance the flavor. How if, like suppose today I was making medu vada, so I was thinking, how long should I be frying this so that it is cooked, the inside of it is
Oh.
also cooked,
Hmm.
and how nice would it be if it is nice and spongy. So what else do I need? How should the consistency of the batter is required to be? So those kind of attention to detail you'll have when you have a major in food
Yeah.
science.
Yeah, especially with regard to this is one thing which I realize nowadays, which is very important. Because I realize it's important because I realized it late actually. But you have internal cooking temperatures for even meat and chicken and all these
Yes.
different kinds of protein, and it's really important because if you have something which is uh, not cooked properly, what would happen is like you end up ingesting a shitload of like bacteria, worms, and things like that, which can cause havoc in your internal system. And there are these videos I saw on YouTube very recently of these tapeworms that grow.
Ew.
Yeah, they're huge. They're big and they're disgusting. And apparently they happen if you have uncooked ground meat. And the whole and this is because I started cooking by myself, especially meat. It's been only 2 or 3 years. And before that, I was just going outside and eating. So, what are some other things with reference to food safety that are important to kind of pay attention to when you're just generally going out and about shopping for stuff?
Mhm. I think what is very important is to cook food at a high temperature before consuming it.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to meat, it is important to cook it at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, which ensures that the harmful bacteria get killed.
Hmm. So
So, uh,
go for it.
So I think that is what is very
Hmm.
crucial. Also with fresh foods, like if you're eating a salad, then if you're making a salad, you need to make sure that you wash the veggies very well before you make a salad, because that's not something that can be heated, right? So you really need to be careful when you eat fresh produce as well.
Right. So there's a couple of things here. For one, when you say well cooked, there are some people who believe that overcooking meat is not good as well. Right. So they say that, wait, this meat is kind of overcooked. So is there like a sweet spot with reference to temperature that generally is part of your meat cooking?
It really depends, but personally, I'm a vegetarian.
Oh,
I am against cruelty to animals, and so my food choices are I don't choose meat.
right.
Even when I stayed in the US for like 2.5 years, but I did not. And the town that I stayed in was Starkville in Mississippi. It's a student
Yeah.
town. It didn't have too many vegetarian options for me. But I still stuck to it, and I feel I'm very proud of
Hmm.
it. To be
Yeah.
honest, mostly I ended up eating salad and Subway,
Oh man.
but then I still did not give up on it. About meat, I would say that yes, it is important to not overcook it. You need to make sure that the texture of the meat does not change or the mouthfeel does not change. But at the same time, it is important to get it at a certain temperature, which makes sure that the harmful bacteria in it are killed.
Hmm. Right. And those temperatures, I'm assuming, available online. If you have a look at like different kinds of meat, have different kind of temperatures, and that's I've seen it. It's available online for sure. Yeah, and go for it.
Or if there is like a slice of meat that goes in your sandwich, for
Yeah,
example, then you really need to make sure how it was stored. If it needs to be stored at actual temperatures. It cannot be stored at room temperature. In that case, it is going to spoil, and that is what is very critical here.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can't. This is crazy, but I realize like with certain kinds, you can't screw around with meat safety. Like meat safety is one thing where you cannot fuck around with because earlier, like I used to think that it's cool. You can like if the meat has been out for a bit, you can like go ahead and cook it, no problem. It's not smelling, it's okay. But no, that's not. You actually need to ensure that it's super safe, it's super clean, and where you get it from also. And that's why it's always shady whenever I get meat. Like if I go down to the guy and get some chicken when I was back home, because I didn't know how long that meat was out, and that's really problematic. But what you said, you're a food scientist, am I correct?
Yes, I'm a food science
Right,
major. So my research was more about the food safety, the microbiological food safety aspect.
right. And when you're talking about food safety, like, and firstly, what's the difference between a food scientist and like a nutritionist?
Yeah, that's a really good question because people mostly just confuse the two professions. Uh, you know what a food scientist deals with all these aspects like food safety, food new product development, food preservation, food microbiology, food
Hmm.
analysis. These are the kind of topics that we deal with. But nutritionists or dietitians, they are taught to tell you what kind of food is good for you for your body type,
Right.
or or there are clinical dietitians who recommend diets to patients like diabetic patients or people with some specific illness, so they are trained for that, but food scientists are not trained for that.
Right. And why is food science in general important? Like, what industries does it serve?
I'm sorry,
I said, what
what?
industries
What
does food science serve?
Basically, food industry is huge. Whichever part of the world you go, there will always be a need for
Yeah.
food. So I think it's a very huge industry. And what was the other half of
So,
your
like,
question you
why is
asked?
it important?
Why is it important, right? It is because it is important because food safety is important.
Yeah.
So you really need to know the science behind food, what you're putting inside your system, what are the ingredients of it. Also, in terms of sustainability, what kind of food materials should be coming in the market. Those kind of inputs a food technologist can give.
Right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's super important, especially when you're talking about certain kinds of movements of food. For example, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but even in India, we had the Green Revolution. But before the Green
Correct.
Revolution, and one of the huge reasons why we had the population boom in India was our ability to sustain ourselves with the Green Revolution, with the products of the Green Revolution in India. And before that, our sustainability or our ability to sustain ourselves through food was always in question. I think, in fact, a large portion of our food was also imported. But the moment we had, I think there's a university in Punjab. It's called the Agrarian University of Punjab or something of that sort. But basically, they kind of collaborated with scientists across the world, and they came up with they instituted a genetically modified version of the wheat that we used to use. And with the help of that wheat, we were able to feed a significantly larger amount of our population with a lower yield, with a lower requirement of water and things like that. Obviously, now it's there are some sustainability issues. The water table is going down in Punjab and everything, but that small leap in agrarian technology actually facilitated a huge growth in our population, and it kept us fed for a very long time. And now,
Yes.
what does that look like? Like, what are some of the typical things that you're doing on your job?
On my job, I work as a research associate with TUV Nord, TUV India Private Limited, here in Pune. Basically, what I do is I handle shelf life studies. So shelf life is something that you need to define as to how long a food product has the best of its quality
Hmm.
and is safe for how many number of
Wow.
days. That is something that you need to claim on the package, on the food package.
So
So best before,
how does research for something like that work?
so we give a best before date for every food product before it comes on the shelf. So how long it can remain good on the shelf, that is something that is what I work on. How we do that is by carrying out an experiment where this food product is kept on the shelf, and there are frequencies, like if there is a shelf life of 6 months, then we pull it out after every month or every 15 days and check the different quality and safety parameters of that particular food product. So that is one way of doing it. But for example, if there is like a 6 month shelf life, but I want to do the study in 3 months because I want to launch my product in 4 months, then in that case, I have to do an accelerated shelf life study
Okay, so you
where
use like different kinds of. Sorry, go ahead. Tell me.
so basically, I would keep the food product in a humidity chamber or a chamber that has elevated temperature and humidity conditions. So we use temperature as a spoilage factor to accelerate spoilage.
Oh, right. So basically, you kind of change the variables around it to kind of
Right.
simulate time. So basically, you're kind of
Yes,
using
exactly.
time, you're using the temperature and humidity to accelerate the time in which a
Right.
product is in its shelf life.
Right. So that is correlated to a product that can remain for example, I did a study for 3 months at accelerated
Yeah.
condition. I may I may claim that it can stay good at room temperature for 6 months.
That's super cool, man. That's really cool. That's awesome. With reference to so here's the thing. I'm a little bit of a slob, right? And every time I see,
Great.
sometimes there are products that I have in my like, that I've bought that are way past their, like, it's been at least like a few months, 3 or 4 months past their shelf life. Obviously not milk and things like that, but like canned
Right.
goods and Tetra packed iced teas, which are just black. And
Right.
when I consume them, even post their shelf life, they seem to be fine.
Mhm. Right.
So, like, is there a margin of error? Are you all purposely being safe? Like, what's the scene there?
It depends. It depends on the kind of product that you're trying to use. Like for example, if it's like coffee powder, or like those little tea bags that you get, that you dip in water. So those kind of food products may stay longer as compared to their shelf life. Whereas compared to the claimed shelf life on the packet, it just depends on the food product. Like you said, any perishable foods, like say for example cheese or any milk product, it is difficult for these kind of products to stay beyond their
Right.
claimed shelf life.
So my question is then, like, if a packet of tea, supposing if I get a tea pack, let's go with that example. If I get myself a tea pack, and its shelf life is like what, 8 months, and I'm the slob that I am, I see it 18 months later, and I'm like, you know what? Let me give it a try. Let me dip that shit in tea, right? And I dip it in tea, and then I make it, and it tastes perfectly fine. Now, why would a company do that if they know that their product may last 18 months? Why say that the shelf life is 8 months?
Uh, I, that's a really good question, and it makes me
Yeah.
think. I would say that a tea bag or tea powder that has a claimed shelf life of 8 months may not stay until 18 months.
Right.
Because there will be some quality deterioration. There are people who do sensory analysis for these kind of products. Like they have very good sensory, super tasters. So they have like your sensitivity towards tea and my sensitivity towards tea may
Got
be
it.
different. Okay. So your sense of smell, your sense of
Okay.
taste, all those things may be different from mine. So those kind of quality changes may happen over
Right.
time, and that is not something that a manufacturer would want.
So it's like,
So that's why they would.
it's not just about the safety aspect of it, like
Right.
if you eat it before this, it will not kill you, and if you eat it after that, it's going to kill you. It's not just safety, but it's also quality. So it's saying that this
Yeah,
is when the
definitely.
product is at its best, and this is when after that the quality of the product is going to go down, but it still may be safe, right?
It still may be safe, yes. So there are electronic noses as well. There are machines which are fed all the information, and then the machine analyzes your sample as to how the aroma is, whether the aroma has deteriorated over time. So every time after 15 days or after a month, you need to pull it out. You need to get it tested. You need to test all these parameters, and that's when a shelf life can be claimed. That best before date on the package comes after all these tests.
Sure. This is a super nerdy question, but how what's the typical sample size of instances where you try the, like, supposing if you're doing it?
It depends on what test we are trying to do.
Okay.
So there's like a trained sensory panel, like people who are trained to carry out sensory analysis. Then, depending upon the product, I arrange a sensory an experiment.
Yeah.
Where I have all these parameters listed. That how is the aroma, how is the taste, what about the aftertaste,
Ooh.
what about the appearance.
Damn.
So they rate it. They actually rate the sample
Yeah.
depending upon how their sensitivities.
Right. So it's almost like you're doing an expert panel, but for taste.
Right.
That's, yeah. Okay. And that's one variable, but then you can also use machines, and then you can use, like, that would be a little bit quicker, I'm
Yes.
guessing, things like that. You can use the.
Right. Ultimately, I think we feed the information to the machine as well.
Nice.
It is us who's going to give an input to the machine, and then it's going to function in that way.
And I would imagine these sensory guys, like, first of all, I've never heard of this sensory experts that you were just talking about, and those guys must be some pretty premium guys. They probably get paid a lot as well.
Yeah, I think these big beverage companies like PepsiCo and coffee manufacturers, they have coffee tasters. They will hire people like that, for sensory analysis.
Wow.
Mostly beverage companies. Yeah.
Every now and then you probably meet like a self-taught coffee taster, and they'll be like, "How did you learn it? I learned this by myself. I learned how to taste coffee." And most of them have to be trained, though, right?
I'm
I
sorry,
said most of
what?
them have to be trained, right?
Yes, they need to be trained.
Okay, that's nuts.
But some people are gifted. Like some people, their sensitivities are very high. Like sometimes I can smell so many things, but my sister just cannot smell them.
Oh,
So,
that's amazing. Like I know
so
a lot of a lot of people I know who might be listening and who are very picky eaters. They'll be like, "See, I
right.
told you." Like it's like some of the things some of the choices I make don't really work out. I didn't know that people can be hypersensitive to taste
Yeah,
more than.
yeah. I think say similar kind of thing. It just reminded me of wasabi. When I ate wasabi, the taste just went to my head. And have you eaten those wasabi
Oh yeah,
beans?
I have. Yeah,
They just taste so bad. I mean, they just taste horrible.
yeah. You kind of get
So
used
it
to
just
it.
to my yeah. I guess so. I just ate it once, and so that it just depends on your
Yeah.
sensitivity.
Yeah, my taste buds are numb after years and years of eating like spicy shit. Like now my
I
taste
see.
buds don't function. So like I don't even know if that's a thing, but for sure. And
No, I think
go for it. Go for it.
that happens with a lot of Indians.
Happens with a lot of people.
Lot of Indians, because that happened to me in the beginning when I was in the US, that nothing stimulates my taste buds because I am used to eating spicy food, I'm used to eating highly salted food. So anything that is a little bland, I'm not able to get any taste.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because some of these, because I go online sometimes, I look at these cooking videos, right? And I'll be like,
Right.
this sounds too bland to me. And then at
Right.
the end of it, I have to add 3 or 4 like Indian spices that my roommate has, like 3 or 4 like garam masala, red chili powder, cumin, and dhania powder. Anything that I make, which like I know that's going to taste bland, I add these 4 elements to it because I just want some kind of flavor in my food, for sure.
Right.
And so do you also know a lot about these labels with reference to like food, nutrition, and things like that? Is that something that you guys find out about?
Yes, so nutritional labeling is something that is taught as a part of analysis of food to food
Yeah.
technologists. It is taught as a part of the master's course. So basically, this is known as proximate analysis, wherein you find the amount of protein, fat, carbohydrate, that all those you analyze in a particular food product.
Is it reliable?
Yes,
Right.
if you do it from a trusted laboratory, yes, it is.
And how many of these companies do it from trusted laboratories?
It depends. Like, see, I really trust the USDA. If it says that it is USDA organic, I trust it.
You USDA, but like in India, like how do you know? Like when you're looking at a label, because I've seen all kinds of like I've seen some of these labels are reliable. Like they just seem like
Right,
they are very accurate. Some of them they look
right,
like they've rounded the figures off. You know, like
right.
they use.
You really need to be a very well aware consumer when you go out there and you're trying to buy something. It depends. You should in India especially, it is important to go to trusted
Yeah.
manufacturers. uh, I think they have a lot of compliance to do.
Right. Yeah, because like, and also like, especially with the smaller food companies, like I love some small scale snacks. Like, if I'm having in Pune, you get these corn puffs, which are amazing, right?
Right,
So, and I always got it next to where I used to stay in Pune, and I love them. And over a period of time, they grew. So earlier they used to not have a nutrition label, but later on they started keeping a nutritional label. And the thing is, when I looked at it, I saw that the grams of fat didn't add up when you were calculating that aligned with total calories. So like it was saying 180 calories per serving or whatever, but the total amount of fat per serving was larger than that. So they didn't do it times 9, right? Which they have to do it, right? It's about like 1 calorie of fat, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories, that whole thing. So they didn't calculate that. So when a company actually states that this is their nutritional value, is there anybody who's checking up on whether or not that's accurate?
Slowly, India is developing towards that. There is a food safety authority in India, the FSSAI.
Yeah.
So they have, they are still working on it, and it is not as safe as USDA definitely, but slowly they are getting
Yeah.
there, I would say.
Yeah, and also like people think that the USDA is safe, but that's not, like, I mean, it's the problem is that there are so many financial interests involved here that the people who are running the USDA are heavily involved in lobbying and things like that. So I don't want to make accusations.
There are loopholes in the
Sorry?
system.
There are loopholes in the system.
There will always be loopholes in the system, but I still feel it is better than, definitely it is much better than how it is in India. Food safety is taken very, very casually here. So definitely in the US, it's not like that.
Yeah, right.
And
I think also a lot of myths. So we had a lot of superstitions and things like that, which would help us, right? For example, don't eat meat after a certain time in the day. Don't do this. Like we had certain heuristics with reference to how to handle food, but those were for an era where we didn't have refrigeration, we didn't have storage, we didn't have all that stuff. So I'm assuming that in the recent past, a lot of things has changed in the way we handle foods. But our heuristics, or like our little mental rules of thumb with reference to all these things, haven't changed. And that's getting to be a problem.
Yes, I think we still need to catch up with a lot of things when it comes to food safety. Uh, Definitely, in India, it is still not as strictly regulated. And but there were incidences like a few months back. The FDA has closed down a few vada pav centers in the city because they had some very bad potatoes that were going in the vada pav. So there were strict actions taken against those kind of people, and then it was big news. And when they did something like that to somebody with a big name, then all the other people, suddenly everybody gets like very cautious about what they're doing.
Yeah, that kind of regulation, I can imagine, must be such a pain. Because you have all these guys. First of all, I think we have really strong immune systems as Indians because of some of the shit that we put up with, and we don't even question. For example, if you see one of the, like, I have sandwich, like when I'm walking, I'm from Bombay, right? Bombay mein, you have to have the sandwich. Doesn't matter, like if you're even partly hungry, one of your friends looks at you sideways, say chal na khate, you'll go and eat it. There's no way that you won't eat it, no matter where you are. You won't look at it because all these sandwich walas are the same. But sometimes I look at how those sandwich walas handle their hands and I feel disgusted. There's no way, like, the thing is, this is going to be disgusting, but this is what we eat on a daily basis. This guy has probably taken a dump, like had a shit somewhere in the area, and the way the sanitation works for people in public spaces, he wouldn't have taken that much care and precaution about the way he wiped and things like that. You're actually putting yourself in risk of ingesting human fecal matter when you eat out like that. So, you have guys putting in that chutney and things like that. Even the water in the chutney, right? A lot of these chutneys that they use are like water based. They kind of spread that out. You
Yes.
don't know what's in the butter. It's been lying out for a while. Butter is a milk product which has been lying out all
Yes.
day. There's your
Yes.
boiled potatoes, which is starch, which is
Yes.
highly prone to,
It will happily grow in those kind of foods, so much
yeah,
starch, so many nutrients. Anything will happily grow. What we need to be careful about, like you said, that very easily salmonella, E. coli, very easily are going to get introduced in these kind of foods, which hawkers will serve. Uh, it's very if you still have no option and you would still go and eat, then it's very important to make sure that it is at least served hot,
yeah,
you know so
yeah. You gotta have like some kind of like if it's cooked, then it's fine. Like I've never like there are certain things that I've eaten, I've never felt sick when I've eaten them, and those are usually things that are cooked well. Things
right.
even with reference to sometimes if I have fried food, right? Like if I have something deep fried, I've fallen sick with it,
Right.
especially if it's like deep fried meat and things like that. But there are certain things like if I have myself, like I've never gotten sick eating a samosa, you know.
Yeah, me neither. Yes,
And I think,
because it is deep
sorry,
and it is served, just like 10-15 minutes after frying.
yeah. And also, it's like we've we've kind of developed our own way to recognize where we're likely to get sick if we eat. So, like if there's like five
So
stalls, sorry,
there's this instinct that Indians will have, that where they should be eating and where they should not be eating, so that doesn't get them
yeah,
sick.
like there'll be like five stalls, and you go to the one which is most crowded because the most crowded guy has the freshest food because he needs to produce more. So like this kind of
Right.
tomfoolery that you have with like all these things. But okay, even if, supposing you had like a lakh and a half and said, you know what, go mad, you got to make yourself a vada pav stall, okay, like a street vending stall. How would someone who's into food safety do it differently than what's being done?
You mean if somebody into food safety wants to start a vada pav
Yeah,
stall?
same constraints. You have financial constraints. You can't, you have to start
Okay,
it on the street. What would you do?
that's a really nice question. I would, for a person with the kind of food safety background, first of all, the cart needs to be a stainless steel cart. Okay, it cannot be made of wood, because wood would retain a lot of bacteria, and those will get transmitted to each time when you're trying to make a new sandwich or a new vada pav. So it is very important to not use any wood.
Yeah,
Then another thing, that is some gloves, that those disposable ones, those need to be used by the food
yeah,
handlers. Uh, each time, they need to make sure that they sanitize the counters before they start
how do they
cooking.
do that?
Uh, they can use there are so many disinfectants available, so many sanitizers available, so those can be used, they can be diluted, and those can be used to clean the countertops, so that flies don't get attracted, or if there is any cross contamination, then that is also taken care of because of sanitizing. So yeah, wearing gloves is also one very good recommendation for food handlers. Apart from that, I think, like I've mentioned before, it is important to cook it well at a high temperature. Yeah. So
Hmm.
also, most of them these days have a water
Yeah.
dispenser. So
Hmm.
I mean, that is probably just for drinking water, but that is not something that they use for cleaning and stuff like that. They need to make sure that they use disposable plates. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, reusing those plates, because what they wash it, but they wash it in someone else. Like they don't restock the water that they use, and then that kind of gets problematic and things like that. So
Yeah, the water also may be contaminated, so it's better not to use the same dishes, wash them and stuff like that. It's good to use the disposable paper
yeah,
plates. Also, another very important thing is that lot of vada pav vendors, those people, those hawkers will use newspaper. They'll give you vada pav in a newspaper. So the ink which is used for printing, that ink is toxic. You cannot put food on that.
right.
It is going to get inside your food. It is banned by the government of Maharashtra. I think 2 3 years back it was banned, but people still continue using it, and it's appalling for me to see that that is still happening. And with a lot of ignorance, people consume those kind of foods. Even at home, if you fry something, it was a regular practice that in Diwali, if you fry some sweets, they put it on the newspaper so that the excess oil gets
Soaked in.
soaked.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're eating outside, like some of the things that you mentioned would be super helpful. Like I know that there are a few places around where, like, even like things which can be pretty prone to contamination, infection, things like pani puri and things like that. There are a few places that make it
Right.
super healthy, right? Like they ensure that they're using Bisley water. They ensure that the servers have their head caps on. They have
Yes.
the gloves, and like even the puris, they look nice. They look like they've been fried in decent oil, like not over fried, because they've got that good gloss over it. And it
Yeah.
seems clean. And a lot of people say,
Yeah.
I don't like it because it's too clean. And there are people who say that, and to them I want to
Yeah.
say, like,
Yeah.
I think that's so wrong, man. Like I sometimes even I've been like, dude, everything's perfect about this place, but it's not that shady place that we eat down the road. Like there's something about it. There's always been that thing, and I'm so conflicted when that
Yeah.
happens, because like at a certain level I know that this place is great because it's so clean, but the food doesn't taste the best,
Right.
and that's a huge dilemma.
Right. So I think it is more to do with unless and until there's a gutter running behind the thela, I just don't feel like eating.
Yeah,
So it is like that.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty tough, man. And
Right.
so, just in general, like a lot of these industry, like a lot of these companies have a vested interest in you consuming their food. Obviously, right? That's why they're in business. But
Right.
sometimes they may want you to think differently. They may want to misguide you in certain ways, right? For example,
Right.
putting stuff like 500%, 100% less or 60% less fat on a product which never had that much
Mhm.
fat anyway, right? Things like that.
Right. Right. So
So
this is
yeah,
misleading.
misleading, deceptive tactics. With reference
Right.
to your field, where have you seen these deceptive tactics kind of come up?
A lot of times that happens. Like for example, a food product that is plant-based oil. On those kind of food products, there's a label that says zero cholesterol. So what does that even
Hmm.
mean? Cholesterol is a fat that comes from it comes from animals. Like ghee will have cholesterol. Butter that comes from a cow's milk or buffalo's milk, that is going to have cholesterol. Something that has come from a plant, like palm oil, that is not going to have cholesterol because that's sourced from a plant.
Right.
So these kind of labels labels are extremely misleading, and slowly India is getting there. They are not allowing these kind of misleading labels. So yeah, we are trying to catch up with food safety, and we are trying to work on that.
Yeah, I feel also it's like a cat and mouse game. I feel like wherever you go, there's some level of deception. Like, for example, uh, like, man, I saw these wheat-based biscuits, right? And they're like, well, 3 grams of fat per serving, right? Or something like that. And like, so, but at the same time, when you look at the overall macros of this food, it's got like 50 grams of carbs per serving, like crazy high amounts. So out of that, like 30 grams would be sugar, which is a lot. 30 grams of sugar per serving is a lot for your body to take. And I've seen a lot of people get excited by the label, right? I've seen people literally like, oh, this is happening. And they go ahead and buy it. So how can someone remain critical in times like this?
Yeah, I think it is very important to not fuss about it. I think it's the whole fuss and the whole, it's some kind of hysteria, like, for example, when people read like gluten free,
Yeah.
so suddenly they feel that, oh, gluten free means it is supposed to be healthy. It is not like that. If you are not allergic to gluten, why would you buy something that is gluten free?
Yeah.
The body does not require that.
Right.
So I think it is very important to not fall prey to these kind of food fads.
Yeah, and I guess it would also be important to know what gluten is and where it comes from, because like I've seen like packets of oats have gluten free, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Oat never has gluten in the first place.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
not
that's
supposed to be
what.
having gluten in the first place. Like, why are you telling me gluten free on that?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so that is unnecessary, and it's some kind of food fad, some craze that the world gets into, and it is a big food industry. You just fall for it as a consumer. So that you should, as a consumer, I think we should all have that much awareness as to what we are trying to buy. One of my cousins, he's a teenager, like 17, 18, and he's trying to work on his body. So he would come to me and ask me, is it good to eat brown rice instead of white rice? I would go crazy. I would say that, what is wrong with you? You just eat the kind of food your mom makes, our grandmother has always made for
Yeah.
us. You really don't need to get into some kind of food fad.
Yeah.
Just eat the regular basmati rice that your mom has been feeding you since you were a baby,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah, a lot of people actually, this is something that even I didn't know like I didn't really think about up until maybe like 10 months ago, when I was talking with my friend and reflecting with him. So we were designing our food plans, and basically what happened was that I was thinking, should I add white rice to my diet, because it's all starch, it's going to shoot my blood pressure, my blood sugar right up. I don't need that in the middle of the night, like, things like that. So apparently it turns out that now the people are thinking that if you have starch with fiber, it stops acting as starch. Then you start digesting it slower. So the process is different. So what's beautiful about this process, at least in my eyes, is that our perception of what is good for you changes over time. And what's also awesome is that it's changing based on some level of research and level of knowledge, right? I think one of the best examples of this is the use of creatine as a supplementation. So like creatine, like I don't know if you know about creatine, but it's a compound which is readily available in red meat, right? And it basically helps a lot with muscle regeneration and your ability to translate uh, muscle potential into power. So basically like lifting heavy and things like that, it gives you an edge. But the thing is that they found that it gives you an edge through a process of research, through those through focus group, not focus group, sorry, through hypothesis testing and basically ensuring that there's a control group and a treatment group, and that whole process before they were able to say with a certain level of certainty that this thing helps. And what's also awesome is, like, supposing if something new comes up that we don't know whether or not it's effective, somebody is going to find the literature on that. And then once they found the, like, not find the literature, somebody's going to create the literature on that, do the research, find out if that's effective in different groups of people. And then what's also awesome right after that is people actually combine that research, meta-analysis or a literature review, and they give you that information, like, just freely to kind of go through, and their conclusions can be used to better your life. So just that whole process of using the scientific process for information and self-development is huge. Do you access that ever?
Yes, I do to some extent. Because I have been a research student, and that is what I have done. Even before I have conducted any experiment, there's a lot of research that goes into. There's a lot of literature review that goes into before you accept something as your experimental design, and then you go ahead with that.
Right.
But then when it comes to consuming a certain type of food, I would trust what my grandmother taught me, what my grandparents taught me, rather than reading a research paper, what a research paper tells me. Because I feel that she is a living example of what she ate, what kind of life she had, how her health is right now. So she is a living example of that. And that's very, very evident. And also being a food technologist, I have that much awareness wherein I feel that it's important to not fall prey to these kind of food fads.
Right. So how would you define, give me an example of what you think is a food fad though?
Like right now, we mentioned about leaving. See, it is for me what I believe that it is important to eat local. Whatever is available locally, whatever is local food, you should be opting for that.
Right.
It is as simple as that. I don't see a need to complicate it. I don't see a need to eat some kind of protein bar or this and that. You really don't need to do that.
Right. What if, this is the same conversation I had, a similar conversation I had with Ajitesh in the past, and I asked him, I'm someone who is for supplementation. I believe that if you can find out and identify through science certain things that can help you, then go for it. Also, not just science, but try out what works for you. For example, I will try out any supplements. Like, I will try out anything that my friend suggests, or that I've done some research on. Saying, when I've done the research, I'm going through research reviews of it to test the efficacy of it. Nowadays, there are YouTubers actually who kind of give literature reviews with reference to fitness, health, things like that. I try it out. I see if it works, and if it doesn't work, I let it go. And I keep on what that does. But I'm all for that because it's been helpful for me. A lot of people say that you shouldn't. Are there any risks associated with this kind of behavior?
Honestly, this is something I really need to think about. But a similar kind of thing I experienced when I lived in the US. Like, if I ever got ill, I looked it up on the internet. Like, it was crazy. I looked it up, and then it'll tell you crazy things that you're going to die in the next 10 days. But then if there was, I always missed that somebody who would tell me that this is how a woman's body is going to work, and these are the kind of things. This is how your body works. If somebody told me that, it would be much more helpful than me reading out on the
Right.
internet.
Yeah.
You know. So I think I would choose the other way rather than I wouldn't read things and then I wouldn't want to do too much research about it before before making any change like that. I would just continue whatever diet I'm following
Yeah.
that I have been following for those many
Yeah, I think
years.
that, I guess that makes sense. One of the reasons why I don't like personally do that is because like I never trusted my dad growing up. Like I would eat all kinds of crap, and because my mom loved me a lot, she'd be like, "Yeah, eat what you want." And so the thing is that I never had a system of figuring out what are the right things to eat. And at the same time, like I also know that our Indian diet is it favors carbs very heavily, because I think in the 60s and the 70s, when this diet got solidified, right, we did not, our food technology was very bad. We were a very poor country, which is not seen now. You can still afford like different kinds of food now,
Yes.
and you can, there's the market mechanisms has created an opportunity for those kinds of foods. So just in terms of navigating that decision making matrix for somebody who understands, another thing which I realized, which is very scary, and this is something I tell my dad all the time, is that the moment you turn 30, you end up losing 5, or I want to say 10 pounds of muscle mass every decade. So you're actually losing a lot of critical muscle mass as time passes on. And there are certain things that you can do to prevent that, to ensure. And one thing that they found in terms of longevity is like, the problem is when you're 50, 60 is not like the issues that you face, majority stem from your lack of ability to move. So if they're all mobility issues. So and if you're immobile when you're old, that's when you are going to look at an early death. And what actually facilitates a long life is actually being able to have a high amount of muscle mass in your body. Now, given the state of the Indian diet, right? Out of 100 uncles or old people I meet who are like between the ages of 40 to 50, one of them is probably going to be really ripped and really healthy. Not even ripped, just healthy physically. I think a lot is owed to our huge preference for carbohydrates in our diet.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in order for us to change that, we need to figure out a way to do it. Now, the thing is that a lot of even my roommate is vegetarian. And with a veg diet, he needs, like, I eat everything. Like, I'll eat carbs, I'll eat, like, if this is high on fat, I'll eat it. He's like, I can't have anything high in fat because I need to save that up because I have selective amount of protein in my food, things like that. So have you found, like, what do you think of macronutrients? Do you think it's important to have that or not?
Yes, I think it is important to have them.
With reference to like representative proportions of it?
Basically, I'm not into counting how many carbs I've consumed, how many calories I've consumed. I'm not into all of that. But yes, we do need macronutrients. You need to keep. See, it is a lot to do with your mental well-being also, right? I think all this also somewhere narrows down to your relationship with food. Like, when I'm stressed, I tend to eat a lot of carbs.
Yeah.
So,
Same.
so that happens, yeah. So I feel like I need that sugar rush, or I need to feel full right now. So, so that is when you really need to eat food and not get into some kind of what do you call those? Like some kind of eating disorder.
Right. There's also a middle ground though. There's also your ability. So thing is, I've gotten really freaky. So with reference to, so firstly, before COVID, like during COVID, I was tracking my calories, but then after a while I realized I'm eating the same meals every day anyway. So there's no need to me for me to. So I kind of I had that, but I used the My Fitness Pal app, and this was the most. And I'm very fussy and finicky about tracking my calories. I've stopped doing it now, but I'm going to start from next month. And I would track every meal that I would have. I actually had a food weighing scale in my house, and there's any and if
Really?
there's any food which I feel is suspect, I don't know I don't know how much of that volume it is. I weigh my meats, I weigh my grains. I don't weigh my veggies usually because it's like negligible in terms of the macros. But I always maintain I always maintain macros. I'm gonna freak you out, man. One of my buddy, my friend Varun and I, who I've spoken to on this podcast, when I visited Bombay, him and I sat for one whole evening and we backward planned our macronutrients. So we basically planned, say, okay, we're going to eat 2,500 calories a day, and he's a mad guy. He eats 3,200 calories a day, and we said based on that we need X grams of protein per day. So we calculated the overall amount of proteins that we need per day. So we said the rest is for carbs and fats. And then we went and we said this is the total number of carbs and fats protein we need per day. And then based on that, what's going to be our number of meals. And we divided that based on the number of meals that we need to have. So that we had a per meal macronutrient profile. And then we designed our meals. So we went super granular with it. And so I'm an absolute freak when it comes to like making sure that, and I found that it usually helps because before that I was a wild card, man. I would go like if you had a long day. Has this ever happened to you? You had a long day and you just come home and like, I don't want to cook myself food like again, like no way. And then I'm gonna go and have myself some noodles, make myself some instant noodles or something like that, and then that just gets terrible.
Right. I think, the kind of food we eat has a lot to do with the kind of mental state we have.
Yeah.
So it's a lot to do with that. Whenever I have got stressed, I think that's when I put on weight. You know, my eating patterns have changed. So and I realize that I do it with some kind of awareness, but then there's no way out of it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a tough one because stress eating can. Phew. Past month, since I started going out, my roommate and I, let's order some biscuits. So it started with one cookie I would have, right, with a cup of coffee. Just one. It started with one cookie, okay, Amruta. But then it evolved like to 2 cookies, 5 cookies, 6 cookies. Now I have like a good like 6 to 8 cookies every afternoon with an afternoon cup of coffee to get me going. And I know that it's something that's just like it just snowballed into something else completely, and that's pretty messed up. We got to change that.
At the same time, it's very important to enjoy as well. It is okay to let go, let loose, and have fun. We are still young, and I think it's still fun. But at the same time, I think it is important to balance it out. Maybe if I sometimes when I eat more, I feel that I should be a little more aware of things, aware of what I'm putting inside my body. So yeah, I think, at the same time, I feel that there's no need to really what in Marathi we say ki man maraयचं, which means like just kill it, just don't
no,
eat.
kill what like you like to do, basically. Don't like what you want. Yeah, that's I wouldn't say that. Yeah, I would say So once a week, Saturday is my cheat day. So
Cheat day,
that
yes. So that's what I mean. Like, it's okay to
it's
let
very
loose
important
sometimes.
actually. I think that Saturday meal
Yeah.
resets things, puts everything in perspective, and it keeps me
Right.
fresh for the next week. But that stuff definitely helps. And is there anything else that you want to like talk about? Anything that you'd want to add?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking, I would like to talk about the difference that I observed in the US and India because I've stayed in both countries now, and I have worked in both countries. So the kind of the difference that I saw, I wanted to talk about that. Uh, what happens is in India, I think we are still to catch up with a lot of things. There is so much to learn, and while in the US, there's a lot of opportunity. While I was in the US, nobody told me that you won't be able to do this or you are extremely bad at it. Please go home. Nobody said that ever. But in India, it's not like that. People, very, very. I mean, it is very, very casually. Everybody will criticize, and I think something. It is not a very common practice to uplift each
Yeah.
other. It is more about pulling down because that's what in the US I did not see
Hmm.
that. In the US, nobody told me that you can't do this or you won't be able to do this. They would still give you an opportunity. They would tell you that please go for it, see if it works out for
Yeah.
you. Like that. But in India, it's
Hmm.
not like that. Especially when it comes to updation,
Hmm.
of things. That is something that we tremendously lack. Like especially women,
Hmm.
they have been uh, in a certain kind of environment for a very long time, and there's this little protection that is always there. You know, family will always try to protect their girl, or somebody will always try to protect their daughter, their wife, whatever role a lady is
Yeah.
playing. Which is a good thing. I mean, it is really good, but I still feel that does not allow you to get that much exposure. You know.
Yeah, man. So one thing which which I've noticed about the states compared to India is it's way in the states. The one of the cons of being in the states is that it's very competitive. It's very specialized and it's very competitive, which means that you need to be the best that you can be in a very particular specific field. But while you're getting there, people, since most people have taken that same journey, right? Because it's a fair, equal society, everyone's taken that journey. So they'll be like, you know what? I got your back, man. I'll encourage you. Let me see if I can find someone who knows this you want to do. Let me put you in touch with them, and they put you in touch with them. They don't just say that; they do it. Whereas
Right.
back home, what I found is that because we don't have a lot of variance in career choices and things people have to do, a lot of people question intentions. A lot of people say,
Right.
"Hey, you want to do this? Why do you want to do this, man? Why?" Right?
Yeah.
And I get a lot of whys. Hey, you want to do this? But why? You want to do that? Why?
Yeah.
There are a couple of people in my extended family, like one of my uncles, who does not do that. Like he's like, oh, you want to do that? Great, just go for it, man. And every now and then you'll
Right.
find like guys who will be like super encouraging. But for the most part, like sometimes I find guys who will just mostly just
But
tell you, why do you want to do this? What's the reason?
right. Right.
And then just go from there. I'm like,
Yeah.
why in the fuck are you questioning my intentions?
Exactly.
Like just
Yeah. That's what. So they don't assume that you're being modest. Always the assumption is that there's something fishy. That is what the assumption is. And also I feel that as women, there's this constant insecurity that goes
hmm,
around, that oh, she's tough, so she is here to be my competitor. Honestly, I feel that if just because somebody is better than you does not make you any lesser. It's just because somebody is doing well in their lives does not make you bad, right? In the US, I've seen people do so well in their lives. Like that, there were some girls who were good at so many things, So you don't really get into that kind of insecure behavior with them, right? I just felt that they were at a good place.
Yeah,
And they did well with their
I
life.
guess so. Yeah, 100%. A lot of it is also because you have, firstly, different people have scarcity thinking, right? People have that famine mentality. There's not enough for me. So if I don't
Right.
have enough in the world, then how can if someone else has access to this level of opportunity that's less for me? That's something which I've seen not just in the not just in India. I've seen that everywhere. Everyone has that famine thinking. I have that famine thinking. I need to consciously tell myself over a period of time and slowly that no, like people get what they put the effort into, and if someone puts a fuckload of effort into something, then they deserve the rewards. And
Yes.
it's my job to encourage as many people to get there. And if I don't encourage
Right.
someone, I really critically question myself, and I think that's very important to
Right.
do.
Yeah, but that is not something that happens. That is not something that I've seen in India, because if somebody is doing better, I think you need to
Yeah,
encourage, right? That is what I saw in the US, and that is what I learned in the
yeah,
US.
but
But
it's also
but
because you
now it's
accept
not.
it. We accept criticism, you see. So like, for example, if supposing someone's criticizing you, say, why do you want to do it, right? Like, I had someone, this was the first time I got on the phone with someone to be a guest on the
Mhm.
podcast, right? And the first thing they started asking me why. They're like, why do you want to do this? Why are you doing this podcast? But why? But they asked me like a consecutive, uh, you know, progression of whys. Now the thing is, I know what that
Right.
person was doing. They were trying to kind of help me realize what it's about, like my podcast. But the thing is, with all due respect, that's not why I had called them. Right? I had called them to
Right.
ask if they'd want to be a guest. But suddenly they're questioning my
Right.
intentions. And they're like,
Right.
why do you want to
Right.
do this? Well, everything doesn't have to be a why. If I'm here, I'm here. Right? Don't question
Mhm.
that. Let me be there,
Right.
and then let's see what happens. And this kind of behavior, which I'm saying, like, just don't question my why, just say I'm here, and then evaluate whether or not I'm going to be there. That's actually a very dangerous thing, because now I'm evaluating how you fit into what I need. You see? So now I'm evaluating you as an
Right.
adult. I'm not questioning your intentions. I'm questioning what value you can add to me, which is the market economy in which the US is. So the US is based on a market economy, most which which says that I'm going to be judging other people based on what value they can add around me. Whereas in
Mhm.
India, that might not be, which is a good thing also. So
Yeah, it is. That's what I was
when I
about to
go back
say. Yeah.
home and I sit and when I'm chilling, people don't question what value I can add to them all the fucking time, right?
Yeah,
They're
that's
like,
right.
yeah, here, man, let's chill, let's do it, let's do our thing. And
Mhm.
that's with more people in India than in the US. Like in the US, I'll probably have that with a select few people. And that's pros and cons. Like
Mhm.
that's one of the cons of living in a market economy is the level of isolation that it creates. You're going to be by yourself, and most of your time is you're going to be isolated, you're going to be in that corner. And then, but the pro
Mhm.
of it is you get to live as an adult, you get to set a goal for yourself, a vision for your life, and you have the opportunity to
Right.
try that out in small steps and go for it. The con of it is,
Right. There's less chaos. Yeah.
sorry.
There's less chaos, I
Yeah,
said.
there's less chaos, there's less people stepping on each other's feet, things like that.
Right.
But each has its pros and cons. How have you found it? How do you
Right.
deal with it nowadays? How do you work with it?
Uh, from what I observed, see, when I was doing my MS, my graduate advisor, he never once in 2.5 years has ever criticized me. And that helped me immensely
Hmm.
believe in myself. I became very confident about what I was doing. So I felt like this is a very good way of getting to shape somebody's career you
Hmm.
know so but that I don't get right now in India. So you're asking me how I deal with it. uh, the only way I look at it as, if somebody criticizes me, for example, I will try to get what is, if it is constructive criticism, I take it as feedback, and I would want to work on it. But if it is not constructive criticism, then I would probably just ignore.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that's a great approach to have. Yeah. But also, I just want to say that in the States, if people think you're not, like, if people sometimes, because they're very nice, they don't give you feedback.
They're very
They
Yes,
stay,
yes,
they hold back
absolutely,
that feedback. And that's a little bit
yes,
of an issue as well, because you want people to be, at least personally, I want people to be straightforward. I want them to be telling me, exactly, "Hey, bro, might want to work on this." And it's very
right,
seldom that you get both. Like, here it's like, okay, people give you feedback, people say critical things of you, but they do it very subtly, very, like, they don't do it very directly. It's very, you have to
right,
read into it to find out what it actually is. You can't, like, it's not as straightforward.
direct,
Like, someone
yes,
like, people will be like a couple of times spoken to guests, I'm like, we're going to be talking for an hour and a half. What, we're going to take our time. Some people will be like, don't you think people are going to get bored listening to it? And some people would be like, I feel like that amount of time is like, we've run out of topics to talk about. Some people are subtle about it, some people are very direct about it, and that's different, like,
right,
different according to different places. But yeah.
yeah. It's a lot to do with the kind of
Yeah.
culture.
Yeah.
So I think in India we are very. Sometimes we can get very blunt
Yeah.
like that. Whatever we have to say, we'll just say. And in the US, however, it is people are very polite. I was surprised, even if you're walking on the road, there are people just waving at you and saying, "Hi, how are you doing?" It was so weird for me in the beginning that I hardly know these people, and why do they even care waving at me or asking me how I was doing? So
Yeah.
it was funny in the beginning, but then later on I got
Yeah.
used to it.
Yeah, it's in general made me, like, staying here has made me a little bit more considerate. Like, I don't make a lot of assumptions that I used to make, because everything here is about not making assumptions. Like, you can't make assumptions about people. You can't make assumptions about where they're from. You can't make assumptions about what languages they speak. Like, something like,
Right.
like, if I told you right now you speak English well, right? You would take it as a compliment. Like,
Mhm.
supposing I go, like, if I go, so when I was in India, people be like, "Bro, you speak English really well." Indians think, well, that's a differentiator because you speak English well, right? It's something like, you educated yourself, you learned something. You come to the US, someone tells you that you speak English well for someone who's been brought up in India. That's a condescending remark. that's something that's something someone's saying to look down upon you. They made an assumption about you which is terrible, which doesn't make sense. So, like, things are kind of like,
Right.
things are translated differently. And
Yeah, it is all relative.
sorry.
It is all relative to where you are and what context you're trying to speak
Exactly.
in.
It's very varied, and it's very context dependent. And
Right.
I feel like every culture has its beauties. I was talking to my friend Rohit when I went back to India, and I was like, man, one of the biggest issues I have is just how exploitative we are of domestic workers, man. How much do we pay domestic workers in India?
Yes.
And that's a huge issue. It's something which really pisses me off. Um, if you're a domestic worker in India, right? you have no job prospects, which means that what upward mobility do you have at working someone else's house? What's going to change in 30 years of your career? Nothing's going to change. You're going to be the same. And they're basically being paid inhumane wages. You're paying someone 7,000, 8,000 bucks a month. Right. You can say, well, we're a poor country, they're being happy. So I guess there's a market for it, yes. But this is when like we have to kind of enforce some level of minimum wage or something for these groups of people. Because if you think about sorry?
Sorry to interrupt you. It's not just domestic workers. I think there are so many job profiles which are like that in India, where there is no regulation at all, and it is exploitative. It is. I think people are just made to work like like some donkeys who keep on working around the clock, and they are not getting those kind of benefits. There is no growth in that kind of a job.
Yeah.
So it's not just domestic workers, but there are many profiles like that which are similar to what you were saying.
And people accept it. People just take it, like because that's what.
Yeah.
And especially for some reason, I've always noticed in Mumbai, it's always the locals who are fine with having a set job, which doesn't offer them a lot of prospects for growth, but gives them security. Right. And that whole system where you have someone paying 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 rupees a month, and then you're dependent on that person for, like, supposing something goes wrong. Imagine being that situation scares the living daylights out of me. Imagine being in that situation where you're barely earning enough to keep your family afloat, to pay for their rent and food and everything. And then suddenly someone in your family falls sick. And then you're faced with the option of going to a government hospital where they're not going to be cared for, or actually begging someone for the money to do these operations and do these costly, medical expenses. That's a terrible situation for anyone to be in. And I can imagine how bad it must be even for in the COVID time, man. So many people have lost jobs. I don't know how many people have lost jobs. I've not had a chance to speak to someone who's been furloughed or let off.
It's heartening to see. Right. It is disheartening to see all this happening. I think it will be shocking for the next generation. Like if I have to tell my kids that we went through a situation like this, it would be unbelievable. It is crazy, and with all this happening, a lot of other dynamics is changing. Where you want to fill your stomach first, and you don't want to go and help anybody right now, because the situation is such that you would want to secure what is on your plate.
Yeah.
So the dynamics is changing a lot. People are not very readily helping each other right now. Even there was the other day there was this bus that I took, and I had to come home, but the bus driver won't drop me till my stop. He just made me get down wherever he had to drop me, and so. It was, and that is because they don't get paid for the distance that is from the last stop to my house, and it's not that far, but still they don't get paid for that, so they don't do those kind of favors anymore.
That's terrible, when you're kind of in that situation, because people get when those basic courtesies stop in society, then it becomes way more frustrating. I don't blame them. Everyone's in crisis mode, but still.
Yeah, it's a crisis, and most people don't have, this disaster management.
Yeah.
Those kind of skills, most of us lack. And when there is this big crisis, when you have to feed your family, so you will obviously prioritize them before anybody else, right? So you won't really be that basic courtesy is lacking right now.
Yeah, and I understand why. Even personally, like first of all, with COVID, like people, I'm at least double thinking whether or not I should meet people. So if someone calls me out, says, "Hey man,
Right.
let's hang out," and if I don't know them well enough, like I'll be like, I'm not in control of the people you've met. I don't know who you've met before this. I don't want to
Right.
risk. So just meeting people and just seeing people, like you're risking a lot depending on where you are. Like potentially you're risking a lot. And
Right. And they are your social support,
yeah,
right? Like it gets very
yeah,
difficult
it's super
otherwise.
weird. And on top of that, you have like people who've traveled all over the country, and so it's pretty. Things right now are pretty intense, and hopefully, like over a period of time, things will change, man. Because I think so. So a lot of predictions. I was trying to find out about the economy because for some reason between this whole the media is not covering it. Basically, I don't want to say why it's not covering it, but it's not covering what's fucking happening to the economy. So I wanted to find out from
Right.
economists what's going on. So apparently one of the things that they've predicted is a K-shaped graph. If you know what that means, it's like a K. Like it's basically the economy is going to go like a K, which means that there's going to be a certain population of people in our country that are going to profit immensely from this hit because they have the
Right.
resources, they have staying power, they have staying capacity. But at the same time, there's going to be a group of people that are so severely hit that they are going to fall below the poverty line, and that's going to be a significant group of people. And that's this
Right.
is the effects of this are going to be for years to come, for a few years at least. And that's a fucking scary thought because we were doing so well, man.
Yeah, exactly. We were doing well.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but hopefully the food industry should keep up, don't you think? Like I think it should keep growing.
Yeah, it was never shut because it falls under essential services, so it was never shut. That was also one of the reasons why I chose food science as a major because anything that strikes mankind, food is something that will always be a necessity, and the industry will always have to be functioning. So that only means that you would have a job.
Yeah, I think that does sound good. And is there anything? Is how can someone reach you if someone wants to find out more about food safety or things like that? Are you available online to reach out?
Yeah, sure. They can email me on jadhavamruta7@gmail.com.
Right. And okay, I'll put that out. Or they can just like basically, I'll figure out a way they can reach out to you. You can reach out to me on my Instagram, anyone who's looking, and then I'll put you in touch with Amrita
Yeah,
if anyone.
they talk to me on Facebook or my Insta. I'm okay with
Sounds
it.
good. So, firstly, thank you, Amrita, for having this chat. I really learned a lot actually about food. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I really enjoyed this. This is something that I did for the first time, a podcast. I really like doing it.
Awesome, awesome, awesome.
And the questions really made me think.
Well,
So thank you so much
oh,
for
you're
that.
most welcome. You're most welcome. And thank you so much for answering them so patiently. I know that some of them can be contorted. So thank you.
No, not at all.